Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. My name's Kevin Garrison, Senior Maintenance Tech aboard Platform Hidalgo, 143 miles southeast of Galveston, Texas, right above the Keithley Canyon Formation. I'm 41, divorced, no kids. Been out here 9 days. Scheduled to rotate off in 5. If you're hearing this recording, I probably didn't make it. Let me tell you what happened. We weren't supposed to be out here alone. Hidalgo isn't a production platform anymore, not since Chevron pulled out 3 years ago. What's left now is a skeleton crew and a rotating cast of contractors sent to keep the structure stable and the environmental monitors running. 3 of us were on board when it started: me, Javier Ortega, and Ann Liu. We're subcontracted through Horizon Subsea Systems. Maintenance and environmental reporting, nothing flashy. The rig's old, late 90s architecture. Helideck up top, stacked living quarters mid-tower, and the main deck cluttered with aging derricks, pressure vessels, spools of corroded cable, and rusting pipes that whistle in the wind. At night, it moans like a dying beast. Power comes from TwinCat, 3,516 B gensets in the utility bay running on diesel. Communications through a C-band marine satellite link when it's working. The Monday morning, our satellite link dropped. No data uplink, no emails, no Houston control. I figured it was the weather. Gulf storms play hell with reception, especially if you're surrounded by salt air and corroded antenna assemblies. Nothing unusual. But then the VHF channels went silent too. I tried hailing the Pelican Bay Coast Guard relay, no response. NOAA weather buoys weren't updating either. The whole net was blank. I felt at first that sinking in your gut when you know something's wrong, but can't put your finger on it. We still had power, still had potable water. Reverse osmosis plant was running. Fuel reserves were good. But the supply drop, the one that's supposed to come every 10 days, never showed. No Sikorsky helicopter on the horizon. No drone. Not even a maintenance ping on the network diagnostics. We spent 2 days refreshing the comms console and staring at clouds. Javier was a roustabout with 20 years in the Gulf, proud Mexican-American from Brownsville. Retired Navy. Spent most of his life fixing pumps with a wrench in one hand and a smoke in the other. Never spooked easy. But by Wednesday, even he was pacing. He kept checking the helipad with binoculars, as if a chopper would just appear. Anne was quieter. She handled the remote sensors and environmental data: salinity, water pressure, methane seepage, the usual. PhD from UT Austin, wore glasses that always slid down her nose. She started triple logging the diagnostics, mumbling to herself about the integrity of the uplink. That night, I climbed up to the radar dome and tried rebooting the main dish. Wind was heavy. The whole platform creaked under my boots like it might collapse. From up there, all you can see is water and sky, a flat gray plate stretching to the curve of the earth. No ships, no air traffic, just silence. Something had gone wrong on shore. Thursday, we broke protocol. Javier overrode the backup frequency lockouts and tried to tap into any emergency channels he could reach: aviation, marine, civil defense. Nothing but static. Anne tried relaying through an old Iridium handheld. Still nothing. Then came the beacon. It was around 3 o'clock Friday. I was in the control room running a diagnostics loop on our pressure manifolds when the beacon hit the screen. It wasn't a normal SOS, more like a corrupted signal. Short bursts on the 121.5 MHz aviation emergency band. I remember staring at it, unable to breathe. Red zone. That's not civilian lingo, that's federal containment terminology. We stared at each other for a long time. Javier whispered, "What the hell is non-compliant supposed to mean?" Saturday, the ocean changed. There's a thing that happens in the Gulf when the current shifts. The water turns slick, almost oily, like the whole surface becomes a mirror. That morning, Anne spotted something about a mile out a life raft, yellow and bobbing. We launched the Zodiac and brought it in. Inside were 3 shredded life vests, bloodstains, and a soaked clipboard labeled Sundown Containment. The logo wasn't any company I'd ever seen, just a black triangle over red slashes. Nothing inside the raft but a few broken MREs and a torn satellite phone with its battery ripped out. Anne started having nightmares that night. Said she heard banging on the bulkheads. Then the sky cracked. Sunday, a chopper approached. Not the regular Sikorsky, something larger, unmarked, matte gray. No tail number. It circled once, hovered over the helideck, and deployed 2 figures in hazmat suits. No formal clearance, no response to hails. They had no expressions, just full-face masks and heavy black boots. One carried a Pelican case the size of a generator. The other had a modified Scar H slung across his chest. They didn't explain, just stormed inside. Javier blocked their path at the galley entrance, told them they needed to state their purpose. The one with the scar dropped him in a second. No warning, just a crack single shot. Javier, folded like a bag of bricks, hit the metal grating and bled out right in front of the freezer. Anne screamed. I froze. The one with the case said something like, "High-risk vector breach, burn all." His voice was flat, filtered like a machine. I ran, back up the ladder well into the upper maintenance corridor. I knew every bolt, every vent, crawled through shaft 3B, ducked behind an air handler, and didn't make it. I heard the second shot echo under the steel. And then something worse. Not a gunshot. A shriek. Something came out of that case. Not a machine, not a weapon. A person. At least, it looked like one. But it moved wrong, fast, unstable. I caught a glimpse of wet flesh and jointed limbs bending at impossible angles. It slipped on the blood and let out a high-pitched screech like a feedback loop. And then it attacked one of them. The soldier screamed, dropped his rifle. The thing tore into him like it hadn't eaten in days. I shut the maintenance hatch and sealed it with a hydraulic clamp. I stayed there for hours, listening to the screams fade. Then silence. And now I'm alone. I scavenged supplies from storage pipe wrenches, acetylene tanks, old flares. I've wired a repeater to the helideck beacon and set it to pulse every 30 seconds. If anyone's out there, please hear this. I've locked myself in the emergency pump control station at the base of the rig. There's a welding mask on my face and a nail gun at my side. The power's flickering. The generator's running low on fuel. But I've still got the PA system. Still got my voice. And I still hear it faint, wet scraping sounds climbing up the external catwalks, the metal groaning under shifting weight. Not footsteps, not exactly. Whatever it is, it doesn't walk the way it should. You can hear the hesitation in its movement, like it forgets what limbs are for, then remembers, then forgets again. The pump room is tight bulkhead walls, racks of valve wheels, pressure gauges with trembling needles. This is where the main sea suction intake feeds the firewater loop, normally pressurized to 125 psi. It smells like rust and salt. I dragged in a few emergency rations and 2 bottles of stale Gatorade from a locker on deck 7. I've barred the hatch with a pry bar and an old mooring chain. It won't hold forever, but it's something. Outside, the generator groans again. The Cat 3516B is rated for around 1,500 continuous hours, but the last service was 3 months overdue. It's housed in the utility bay above me, accessible by ladder and an exposed gangway. The longer it runs without attention, the more it threatens to die, and if that happens, the lights go out for good, and I lose all control of this rig. I didn't sleep that first night, just stared at the access hatch and listened. By morning, it was quiet again. I took inventory, a habit from my old refinery job. 12 nails in the gun, 1 partial tank of acetylene, 2 marine flares, a spool of 6-gauge copper wire, and a few hand tools. I pulled the circuit diagram for the emergency lighting and studied it until I had it memorized. If I had to move, I needed to know where the shadows would fall. I waited until late afternoon before I risked opening the hatch. My heart was hammering. The corridor was empty dim, blinking lights casting long shadows across the grated floor. I crept up the gangway toward the generator room. My boots made the metal echo like thunder, no matter how carefully I stepped. I thought about Javier, how easily he went down. 1 shot, clean through. I'd known him for 5 years. He once pulled me out of collapsing cable bay with a grin and a sarcastic, "Don't die on my shift." And now he was just a smear on the galley floor. When I reached the utility bay, I found blood. Dried, dark patches near the main gen casing. A drag trail, streaked, leading out toward the deck hatch. I stepped over it, ignoring the tightness in my chest, and checked the gen panel. Low oil pressure warning was flashing. If the system failed, I'd lose the seawater pumps, the refrigeration loop, and the magnetic locks on half the bulkheads. I needed to refill the oil reservoir. That meant heading to supply locker 4C midship deck, port side. I moved fast. Every corridor felt haunted. The rig wasn't meant to be silent. Normally you hear the constant hum of systems, the low thump of hydraulic rams, the rattle of cooling fans. Now, just creaks, wind, and faraway drips. Locker 4. C had been broken into, the lock hung twisted, torn open by brute force. Inside, the shelves were wrecked. Plastic drums spilled, rags soaked in something that looked like diesel and blood. But the oil canister was intact. 30-weight synthetic, good enough. That's when I heard it again. The clatter of metal on metal, just above, not a machine movement. Human-sized, but too fast. I ducked behind a support beam and waited. Breath held. The sound came closer, then stopped. A face appeared through the overhead grating. Except it wasn't a face anymore. The skin sagged like it had melted. The eyes were wide, too wide, pupils blown open. Its mouth twitched in little spasms. Then it dropped. Right onto the catwalk 5 meters in front of me. It didn't scream, just turned its head at an unnatural angle and rushed me, limbs flailing. I fired the nail gun twice, 3 times. 1 nail hit square in the chest. It staggered but didn't fall. The second hit the neck. That worked. It jerked sideways, hit the railing, and tumbled into the gap between decks. I didn't wait to see if it got back up. I ran with the canister cradled to my chest, back through the central corridor, down the ladder well, and into the generator bay. I sealed the hatch behind me, dropped the oil in, and reset the pressure regulator. The warnings cleared. For the moment, power held. Later, I reviewed the security logs. Our surveillance system is rudimentary, maybe 4 cameras, still functional, but one of them caught something from the night the chopper arrived. A 30-second clip. The feed showed the 2 soldiers entering the galley, Javier confronting them. The shot. Anne collapsing against the counter, clutching her head. Then the Pelican case opened. You couldn't see what came out. Just movement blurry, fast, low to the ground. The soldier with the rifle screamed and dropped. The other never turned. He just stood there motionless, as if waiting. And then something else happened. He lifted his own mask and exposed his face to the thing. Willingly. The last frame showed the creature pale, hairless, fluid slick crawling toward him, jaws opening. Then static. Why would he do that? I haven't found Anne's body. There was blood, yes, but no remains. Either she was taken or changed. The thought turns my stomach. The creatures, they aren't just infected. They're something else. Faster than a human, but not smarter. Animalistic, uncoordinated in groups, but they seem to learn, adapt. The one that attacked me tried to use the catwalks instead of the ladder well. That's not instinct, that's memory. I think they retain fragments of what they were. Today I found another signal. The emergency band flared again, short burst. Not words, just a ping, repeating every 40 seconds. Same frequency as before, but this time it triangulated to the northwest, roughly near the old Cascada drill site. That's BP territory. Nothing active there since 2022. But if someone's broadcasting, I need line of sight to send a burst reply. That means climbing back to the radar dome. If I go, I risk running into more of those things. But staying means I die when the diesel runs out, maybe days, maybe less. There's no food left but crackers and freeze-dried stew. Water's low, and I've started hearing noises inside the walls too regular to be rats. I don't know if the things are nesting or just hiding, but something's using the rig's ventilation shafts. I saw one of the return grills shift last night. Just a slow tilt, like something had nudged it from the inside. I didn't investigate. Instead, I shoved a folded gear catalog into the vent and duct-taped it down. Every other grill I could reach, I sealed with bolt clamps or wedged shut with pry bars. The rest, the ones I couldn't secure, I'd just try to avoid. I spent the morning scavenging a route. I'd already ruled out the main access ladder to the radar deck after that first encounter, too exposed, too narrow, no cover. Instead, I plotted a zigzagging path using the external scaffolding, starting at the south crane armature and snaking along the bulkhead maintenance platforms up toward the antenna gantry. It wasn't safe, but nothing up there was. I packed what I could carry: the marine flare, the insulated wire, a portable battery bank, and the old Motorola repeater rig I'd reassembled using scrap boards and bypass diodes. Its range was limited, but if I could get a clean line of sight above the fog layer, I might punch through whatever residual interference was jamming the C-band link. Before leaving, I pulled power from 3 non-critical systems auxiliary galley refrigeration, 1 ballast pump, and the sewage treatment unit. That gave me an extra half-hour of generator time. I also rerouted lighting to favor upper deck corridors, hoping to leave the lower levels in darkness. Maybe it would keep the things down there. Or maybe I was lying to myself. I stepped out of the control room at 1438, carrying everything in a sling bag strapped across my back and a cold sweat under my collar. The air was heavy. No breeze, no gulls. Not even the usual metallic groan of the wind through the struts. It was like the rig was holding its breath. The first few levels were clear. I moved fast along the exterior gangways, keeping low, one hand on the railing, listening. The rig is a mess of vertical beams and steel plating echo chambers that magnify every step. I tried to walk like I belonged there. Not sneaky, just steady, predictable. If they hunt by sound, I didn't want to sound like prey. At Deck 11, I paused at the old drill fluid tank's huge rust-streaked cylinders long since drained. Behind one, tucked in the shadow of a corroded staircase, I found a boot, still laced, still filled. I didn't look closer. From there, I climbed to the southern crane platform and began the slow traverse across the maintenance struts. The radar dome loomed above, a cracked white sphere perched atop a skeletal tower of lattice steel. Half the access ladder was missing, sheared off years ago by hurricane debris. To reach it, I had to use the inspection gantry, a mesh catwalk only 18 inches wide, suspended 90 feet over the churning sea. Halfway across, I heard the hatch slam shut behind me. Not the wind, a distinct metal-on-metal clank. I froze. The gantry swayed slightly underfoot, the sea far below hissing against the platform's pylons. I waited a full minute, then kept moving. Slowly, eyes on the target. I reached the base of the dome and hooked the repeater onto the lower platform rail. The radar control box was dead fried years ago by salt exposure, but the antenna housing was intact. I peeled back the rusted panel and fed my wire through the coaxial lead, improvising a ground to the steel lattice. When I flipped the repeater switch, the LED blinked green. Signal uplinked. A steady pulse just as I programmed it. 40 seconds apart. No voice, just a data ping and the words, Platform Hidalgo Isolated Infection Request Exfil, repeating over and over. Then I heard the scream. It wasn't close, somewhere 2 decks down. Human, but distorted like it came through a long tunnel, and it didn't stop. Just kept going, rising in pitch until it broke into ragged sobs and then silence. I finished taping the repeater into place and made a mistake. I looked north. The horizon was wrong. From this height, on a clear day, you can sometimes make out the distant forms of other structures, the silhouettes of production rigs, drill ships, supply barges. I counted 7, all of them dark. No navigation strobes, no flare stacks, no heli traffic, just black shapes against the water. And then I saw the smoke. 2 columns, thin and oily, drifting west from one of the distant platforms. Controlled burns, maybe, or maybe not. I began climbing down and made it 3 rungs before the whole ladder shook. A hand shot up from below, pale and blistered, grabbing the rung just inches from my boot. I kicked out. It didn't let go. A second hand appeared. Then a face, or what used to be one. The thing shrieked, mouth torn at the corners, eyes rimmed in blood. It climbed with spastic speed. I yanked my flare from the sling, cracked the cap, and shoved the igniter into the casing. The flame burst with a violent whoosh, blinding red-orange, hot enough to sting my eyelashes. I shoved it down into the thing's face. It screamed this time in pain and fell. It didn't die. I saw it hit the grating, bounce, then scramble away on all 4s like a spider, but it retreated. That was enough. I made it back to the mid-tower hatch and sealed it behind me with a manual bolt. I slid to the floor, heart pounding, skin slick with sweat. I wasn't alone anymore. And then came the voice. It cracked over the PA, my own PA system, which I had rerouted through the control console 2 days prior. A voice, male, deep, but broken with static. Anyone alive, platform Hidalgo, respond. I froze. I sprinted to the comm station and slammed the push to talk. This is Kevin Garrison. I'm on Hidalgo. Who is this? Say again, over. A long pause. Then the reply. Thought it was dead. Triangulated your burst. We're on Thunderhorse, 6 of us. Infection hit here 4 days ago. We held the substructure, running low on fuel. Can you relay visual on supply barge? I could barely breathe. Thunderhorse BP's giant semi-submersible, nearly 200 miles to the northeast. Still manned, still fighting. I couldn't see their barge, but I knew the course it would take. If I could activate Hidalgo's beacon array, maybe I could give them a heading. But then the signal broke again, screaming, metal tearing. Then nothing. The line went dead. I sat in the silence, surrounded by a dead rig, staring at the console. And for the first time in all this, I realized I might not be the only one trying to survive. But if Thunderhorse was falling, if even the major rigs were compromised, this wasn't a quarantine. This was a burn zone. They knew the infection would reach the rigs eventually, that it would crawl across shipping routes, infect the resupply chains, ride the choppers and crew boats. Someone had planned for that. That's why they sent in soldiers instead of medevac. That's why they opened the Pelican case. They didn't come to save us, they came to measure the damage. And now, we're all just data points. I've decided to prep the flare tower next. It's a long shot, but if I can refuel the launch feed and angle it skyward, maybe someone at altitude will see it. A passing UAV, a satellite operator, anyone. We used to have backup flares for emergencies, overpressure events or signal loss during transfer. Most of those systems were mothballed when the rig was downgraded, but the launch tubing still exists, running from the defunct flare stack to the east deck. If I can pump even a few liters of fuel through the old lines and manually trigger the pilot igniter, I might get a one-time signal arc 100 meters high. It's not a rescue plan, but it's a beacon. And right now, a beacon is more than I've got. Fuel access means going below main deck, into the ballast tank control bay, a place I haven't dared visit since this all began. It's cold down there, always slick with condensation and half lit by old marine fluorescents that buzz like angry insects. The last time I set foot near that access hatch, I heard wet breathing on the other side. I didn't check. I just backed away, slow and careful, and locked it shut with a padlock from the welding bench. That was 5 days ago. But now, I'm out of time. At 6:20, I geared up. Coveralls layered under a thermal vest, safety gloves, rubber-sealed boots. I loaded the nail gun again, even though it's more psychological comfort than anything else. The first creature I hit with it didn't die. It just got knocked off balance long enough for me to escape. Still, it's something. I also brought the handheld torch, a 3-cell mag light, and a roll of industrial tape. There's a slim chance I'll need to seal a leak or fasten a temporary valve. The descent was slow, deliberate. Every level deeper felt colder, damper, the air more metallic. The rig is like a living thing. Metal ribs, concrete tendons, pressure running through its lines. You can feel it vibrate under your boots, especially near the tanks. A subtle, rhythmic thrum. I reached the lower deck ladder and unfastened the hatch to the ballast bay. The air that hit me was stale and heavy. Not foul, exactly, but wrong. Like water that had been trapped too long in rusted piping. I eased down the ladder. The bay is long, narrow, with low overhead clearance and walls lined with aged analog gauges. Piping traces the ceiling, bundled and color-coded. Green for seawater fill, yellow for fuel routing, red for combustion feeds. Most of the old flare fuel piping branched off here, split by 2 diverter valves labeled FT1 and FT2. I traced the lines by hand, verifying the feed routes. If I was lucky, one of the diverters would still be intact and dry. I opened valve FT1 slowly. No resistance, no back pressure. Then came the sound. Distant, but definite. A splash. Not water dripping, something entering it. I switched off my mag light. The emergency fluorescents overhead were still glowing dimly, though a few flickered in and out. I pressed myself against the bulkhead and listened. Silence. Then again, closer this time. Something moving. Not walking. Sloshing, dragging. The bay's sump pits are deep, narrow recesses designed to catch overflow. They're perfect hiding spots. I knew that before I came down, but I didn't expect to feel the floor itself shift beneath my boots. I tightened the fuel diverter valve and began opening the bypass port. A strong chemical odor hit immediately, bitter and sharp. Diesel mix, long settled, but still potent. I'd have to bleed some of the line to purge out the oxidized material before getting a clean flare. I turned to grab the purge hose and saw the reflection. In the surface of a puddle behind me, something hunched, pale skin stretched like wax over bones, patchy with dried scabs and black streaks. Its mouth hung open, not screaming, just slack, like it had forgotten how to close. Its limbs were too long, or maybe its joints were just wrong. It was watching me, not lunging, not moving, just crouched, coiled like a spring held in stasis. I froze. If I ran, it would chase. If I fought, I'd get one shot. So I made a call. I didn't run or fight. I spoke. "I'm not here for you," I said. My voice sounded flat in the cold air carried by the steel walls. "Just need the line open." The thing didn't move. I backed toward the hatch, one hand on the purge valve, one on the flashlight. I turned the handle with slow precision. The pump began to hum. Fluid gurgled through the pipes, the line priming with pressure. I counted to 10, watching the gauges. 40, a sigh. 50, good enough. Then it moved. Not toward me, toward the line. It pressed its head against the metal tube and let out a sound. Soft, vibrating, almost like it was humming. I didn't wait to understand it. I slammed the hatch and locked it from the outside. Fuel was in the line. That's all that mattered. The flare system only needed 30 seconds of feed to build pressure in the pilot chamber. The creature, whatever it was, seemed drawn to the pipes. Maybe it mistook the hum for something else. Maybe it just didn't care about me. By 9 o'clock, I was on the east deck, flare stack above me. I climbed the external ladder, dragging the igniter rig behind me, a repurposed electrical arc torch wired to a battery and a pressure trigger. I hadn't tested it under full flow. There wasn't time. The wind had picked up, blowing northward. Good. If the flare lit, it would trail against the wind, visible for miles. I activated the pump for 5 seconds, listened to the flow, and then hit the arc trigger. The flare erupted with a deep whoomph, followed by a lance of flame that shot skyward at an angle, curling in the wind, bright as sunrise. For 10 seconds, it burned, strong, steady, hot enough to bake the paint from the pipe. Then it sputtered, dipped, and died. But that was enough. Anyone in the stratosphere would have seen it. Satellites, high-altitude drones, even recon planes. And if anyone was watching, they'd know this rig wasn't dead yet. I stood there a moment longer, staring out at the water. That's when I saw the boats. 3 of them, low in the water, painted gray-green with military markings, too weathered to identify. No flags, no AIS signals, just silent approach. They were maybe 2 clicks out, engines barely audible over the wind. For a brief moment, I thought rescue. Then I saw the smoke. All 3 had burn marks on their hulls, melted ports, blast scoring around their bows. The lead boat's deck was slick with something, red, black, hard to tell from this height. Figures moved on board, but not like soldiers. They staggered, some crawled. One was crouched over what looked like a torn-open locker, its spine arched unnaturally. They weren't rescue. They were drifting carriers of the infection. Floating coffins. Something had drawn them here. Maybe the flare, maybe the signal. I climbed down, fast and reckless, skinned my palm on the ladder rungs. The comm station was still active. I tried broadcasting again. "This is Hidalgo. Flare fired. Visual on infected craft. Multiple targets. Coordinates follow." I gave everything. Position, bearing, vector. Then I switched to the Thunderhorse frequency. No response. But I waited, just in case. At 10:46, a reply crackled through, faint, broken by static. "Saw flare, repositioning, hold if possible." It was them. Or someone else. Didn't matter. I ran back to the utility corridor, grabbed my remaining gear, and prepped for a last stand. I sealed the lower hatches, diverted remaining power to the exterior strobes, and set the emergency light bar to full output. If they were coming with guns and fire and a chance, I needed them to see me. And if they weren't, then I'd go out with the rig lit like a lighthouse. They said we were offshore, disconnected, outside the chain of transmission. But that was a lie. We were the first point of contact, we were the experiment. And now I'm the last data point. Whoever hears this, if you're scanning old logs, reviewing offshore reports, combing through black box downloads, remember this: they knew it would reach us. They let it happen. And they never planned to bring us back. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.